Welcome to the ESPN 2017 NBA Western Conference Media Call. Now I'd like to turn the call over to Ms. Giannina Thompson. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Giannina Thompson, and I'll be moderating today's ESPN 2017 NBA Western Conference Media Call. We have ESPN NBA analyst Jalen Rose on the call. Jalen, thanks for taking the time to do this call.
My pleasure.
Jalen, alongside Michelle Beadle and analyst Chauncey Billups, will be on the road for the entirety of the Western Conference Finals for NBA Countdown, ESPN's NBA pregame show, ahead of the Western Conference Final games, which are exclusively on ESPN. So we'll get started with Nick Morrell from San Antonio Express News, followed by Charles Holliman from Minnesota Spokesman. You're up, Nick.
So I'm sure that you probably saw or heard Popovich quotes on Pachulia and the Kawhi injury. I was just curious as to your thoughts on that play, whether you thought it was dirty or whether you thought it was just incidental contact and there was nothing malicious behind it. Pop certainly seemed to think that, given Pachulia's history, there was some intent. So I was curious to get your thoughts on that entire series.
Hi, I'm in a unique position to speak on that topic because while something doesn't have to be dirty or malicious, it can be flagrant. But the problem with the league is it's not called as such. And you can take the emotion out of it. The bottom line is it's a play that I am not proud to say I did to Kobe Bryant in the 2000 finals. The only reason why I brought it up 10 years later, nobody prompted me to do so. After that game, after that year, 5 years later, the only reason why I brought it up is because I felt like he was fortunate enough to get basketball karma 81 times against my Raptors. That's the only reason why I brought it up. So with that being said, I think that's how the league should call it, and I do think that's what took place on that play.
Thank you.
Thank you. Charles Holliman, you're up. Charles, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Jalen, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Just, I don't want to belabor the point of what happened last night, but I want you to speak, if you can, on just what are the storylines you can see in this series, maybe that you saw even before what happened last night, going into the series that you can speak on? Well, I'll tell you a storyline that flashed before my eyes as I saw the Golden State Warriors have the season low in points and field goal percentage in the first half. I did a double take to the sideline, and I looked out on the floor, and I was like, can they win this series? That did flash before my face. I immediately came to my senses. In particular, those thoughts came crashing down when Kawhi Leonard goes out of the game and they're up 23 points. And it looks now like a dramatically different series. You go from having the Spurs, who clearly would have won the game. Now, I appreciate Steve being in the building, and I hate that he can't play. I hate that he can't be on the sideline. But that speech isn't the same if Kawhi Leonard doesn't get in. So for me, the storyline coming into the series was a contrast of styles. It's the San Antonio Spurs who forced it to play a lot more conventional bigs, LaMarcus along with Powell and or Dedmon type of lineups versus the Golden State Warriors that feature a death lineup. One team has 4 all-stars and prides itself on ball movement, and one team has a guy in Kawhi that's really just ascended to be a superstar this year. So those are the things I was looking forward to see, a contrast of styles.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We'll continue with Scott Oatsler from the San Francisco Chronicle, followed by Steve Marjorie from the Associated Press. You're up, Scott.
Hey, Jalen. Just not to belabor the one play too much, but it's going to be huge. It's a huge factor, the factor in the series is that play. Do you think that was, again, a dirty play by Zaza, as Greg Popovich said, or was it the kind of thing that guys do all the time and they shouldn't do? I know there's a rule against closing out and putting your feet under the guy, but basically, was it a dirty play?
It's a flagrant play. It's not necessarily dirty because that puts emotion into it. It's not. It's more irresponsible. It's more reckless than anything else. And when you go to contest a shot, if you look at his play, his initial momentum with his foot, it stopped when he contested the shot. Once his foot stopped, he moved it again. The one thing about being a professional athlete is you know your body better than anyone. You know the real estate of the floor better than anyone, other than the guys clearly that's out there with you playing basketball for a living. And you also know the scouting report of each player. And just like a fan in the stands or somebody watching the game that can't hear the volume, we all just saw Kawhi Leonard injure his ankle 2 times before that play in the last handful of days. So it can be viewed as a coincidence. I don't necessarily think it is. But again, to me, the term dirty adds emotion. I don't think that he was trying to put Kawhi in a position to where he could play basketball again. But I don't think that. I do know that there's a difference between being injured and being hurt. And so that's why the league should call it as such. That clearly should be a flagrant foul.
Okay.
Steve, you're up.
I imagine during your playing career, at some point you had to deal with some sort of ankle injury. I was just wondering, from a former player's perspective, just how difficult is that sprained ankle? How difficult is it for a player to deal with and try to play through if necessary, and just what a player goes through in that type of situation?
It's always unique when you have an injury to your lower extremities because you can't still train as normal. Like if you have injuries to your hips or your quads or your hamstrings or your knees or your calf, your Achilles or your feet, it just hampers your ability to not only do the rehab, but your conditioning up. Draymond talked a lot about after the game how basically he was gassed at halftime because the team had been off multiple days and the Spurs were just coming off of a series and they just were, the team that seemed more in shape to perform at the beginning of the game. And that's the same thing that's going to happen with an ankle injury for Kawhi. While he is one of the most productive athletes in the game, it is going to be something for him, A, to get healthy, and or B, to get back to playing like he was. Here's what I anticipate is going to happen. Everybody's going to be breaking news. I'll make it broken news right now. Pop has to come out today and say Kawhi's not playing the game 2. He has to give him those handful of days to get even ready for Game 3. If he's not 110% ready to go, then that's going to be a decision for Game 3. But it'll be a miracle to me. I'm not going to be surprised at all when I see breaking news that Kawhi Leonard is not. He's out for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We'll continue with David Barron from the Houston Chronicle, followed by Nick Kosmider with Denver Post. You're up, David.
Well, actually, I see on my breaking news that Kawhi Leonard is out for Game 2, so there you go.
Bang! Bang! You know what I'm saying? This is what we do.
Switching topics, if I may, to what degree did James Harden damage himself and his team by his performance down the stretch in the Spurs series, and what does he do to restore whatever damage there may be during the offseason? And are people overemphasizing the possibility that he's harmed his legacy or harmed his position with the team by the manner in which he played down the stretch?
A few things. So there's going out competing as hard as you can on any level, any endeavor, and it's okay to lose to a better team. It's actually okay to be beaten by an underdog. Those are the storylines we drive in sports. Now working in the media, had me gravitate to it as a fan, and obviously, gave me enthusiasm as a player. The disappointing thing that I saw that night and I went back a couple of games. I was actually watching this with a lot of friends. And usually I don't remember scores of basketball games because I have so many that run through my brain. But it was 29-28, and it was game 3. James falls on the ground. Nene and Eric Gordon try to help him up multiple times. And for some strange reason, he refused to allow them to help him up. And for anybody that's been on their backside before or saw somebody else, whether it's a teammate, a comrade, how about a complete stranger? Do you know how hard you have to try to not reach your hand to allow somebody to help you up? That almost has to be your sworn enemy. And so when I saw that, that dynamic showed me that there is clearly a disconnect taking place behind the scenes in that situation. And so when you see a team win game 1 by 27 and lose game 6 without Tony Parker and without Kawhi by 39, and he just looks disinterested, nonchalant, didn't take a shot in the first quarter, only took 2 in the first half, had as many fouls as turnovers. James Harden, who doesn't play defense, fouls out. And then the optics never look good when you seem to not show a level of humility or, for me, personal dignity. Not that you can't come out of the house after you lose a game. I mean, when Chris unfortunately called timeout when we were in college, we did go out after the game. When we were college kids, as I started to get older, there was just something in my chest and in my stomach that was like, man, I don't want to be bothered. I can't show my face right now. And so the way he stood around and played the minutes that he played, it just looks worse as the leader when not only you at the club, but you're at the strip club. It's showing that you're giving more effort and more concentration to what's going on away from the floor than what we just saw happen that night. And that was just a poor dynamic to play out, not only for him, but, for the Rockets.
On a less serious note, I'm curious. Michelle jokes a good deal about being a Spurs fan, but when you see her in the studio watching the game before you go to halftime, how seriously does she take the ups and downs of the Spurs?
So I'm glad you brought this up. So there are fans, but then there are actually those who go to games. And what I started to learn as I gotten older, there are many people that claim their team, but others never truly go to games. And so she was a person that her dad had season tickets, still does, and went to a lot of Spurs games growing up. So it just so happened that she became a member of the media, and now her team's playing in the Western Conference Finals, and she's covering it for the first time. So really, the look of anguish that was on her face once Kawhi got injured versus the enthusiasm she showed in the first half when they was putting it down and looking really good, I felt bad for her. I truly do. Because the Spurs had, I think, what it takes to make this a really interesting, possible 7-game series had they won game 1. Now, with what they're dealing with, you can't count out San Antonio, but if Golden State picks up their game and they're shorthanded and Kawhi's hobbled, I mean, you would hope that they could probably find a way to win in 5.
Thank you.
Nick, you're up.
Jalen, thanks for taking the time, man.
Thank you.
I had a quick broadcasting question for you. Our Colorado guy, Chauncey, signed a multi-year extension with ESPN, and I'm just curious your thoughts on sort of his evolution as a broadcaster, a guy who seemingly followed a little bit of a similar path that you did. Just kind of like what you see, take us inside the scenes of the work he does, the preparation, and just sort of how you've seen him evolve in his role and what you see for him going forward.
I'm happy for him as a friend, a brother, a teammate. It's well deserved. I joked yesterday, sitting on the set, that I was sitting with 2 rookies for the Western Conference Finals. Neither one of them had countdown duties before this year on our show, so it was breaking new ground and will be for the finals as well. He's hard working. He's accomplished not only as a player, but as, off the floor, as a humanitarian, as a father, as a husband. He's known to be a leader in the league, a clutch player, somebody that really pays attention to details. And also, there is a level of, when you've been around the corner, you can talk about more experiences. And so, his first handful of years in the league, I think he probably played for 4 or 5 teams. They gave him a different snapshot of, do I even have what it takes to live up to my draft status? Do I have what it takes to have a long career? Then finding a home in Detroit and playing in 6 straight, conference finals and winning the championship and winning finals MVP. So, as somebody that was playing with the Nuggets and met him then while he was at Colorado, and then got a chance to not only be friends with them, but clearly a native Detroiter rooting for the hometown team. I'm happy to work with him, and he's doing a terrific job. And we looking forward to not only the conference finals and the NBA finals, but hopefully, having a team that we can lock arms with in our evolution of NBA countdown and make it go at this for a really long time.
And how hard is he working at that big 3? And I understand he got a cut above his eye. You guys' makeup team have to work pretty hard on him to get him ready?
See, this is where we part ways, and I had to tell him. They're like, man, why you not playing? I'm like, man, let me tell you something. You just retired 3 or 4 years ago. I've been retired 10 years. I ain't trying to be playing no meaningful basketball. I'm trying to be looking up at the score and actually care who wins. And so he's actually doing a really good job of getting his training in and eating better. You saw his Rocky cut above his eye. I'm excited to get out there and go support the big 3 and check out a couple of his games.
Thanks, Jalen.
My pleasure.
We'll continue with Gary Washburn from the Boston Globe, followed by Ian Bigley from ESPN.
Jalen, Gary Washburn here. I have a draft question. When you came out, I'm sure there were plenty of questions about your character, especially associated with the Fab Five and, the braggadocio and what kind of teammate, guy, person you would be. And obviously you passed all the tests of flying colors. But during that process, were you worried about convincing teams that you were a good guy? Did you make a concerted effort to straighten up or talk a certain way during interviews? How did you go about that process what guys are going through now when they're trying to convince teams that they're a good model citizen?
The information now to these players are a lot more prevalent, and they almost can have the Cliff Notes version of the test. Versus back then, I wasn't as informed or as polished to what to necessarily expect. You have people that's working really hard for you. I had an amazing agent, a terrific support group, but still you're the person that's going through it. And pre-social media, things were done more like behind the scenes that was almost insulated, that the public truly didn't know anything about and the players didn't know anything about. So it disappoints me when I hear certain questions get asked. I think one of the young prospects from Kansas was asked, how did he want to die? Something like that. Is that what he was asked?
Yeah.
Answer to that. And so, those are the type of things that, become head scratching and it's totally misguided and has nothing to do with, his projection as a player. But also, when you're a player, like any other job or profession, there's going to be barriers that you have to go through before you accept the position, before you put ink to paper, and before you put on the uniform. So I learned a lot throughout the process, whether it's working out with other players, doing certain drills, taking certain written tests, traveling 3 or 4 cities at a time to work out for different teams in back-to-back situations, trying to really sell yourself to a team that you hope draft you. And right now, each prospect feels like they want to go to the highest bidder. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Ian, you're up.
Jalen, thanks for doing this. Michelle Roberts the other day came out with a statement about how Phil Jackson talked about Carmelo Anthony and calling it inappropriate when Phil said that he thought Carmelo was better off going somewhere else to chase a championship. As a player, ex-player, how do you view how Phil has handled the Carmelo Anthony situation this year?
So I actually, there are a couple of things that I've been pointing out for a couple of years that I think people didn't pay attention to. It's the business of the game, and that's, the Knicks are still ranked first or second on the Forbes list of value franchises, though they haven't had success on the court, though they haven't been, a contending team. Business, the score of the game, and that's how they're doing their business. And a few years ago, there was a time when fans were threatening to picket outside of MSG, the ownership of James Dolan. What did he do a couple of weeks later? He hired Phil Jackson, gave him a $65+ million deal, and turned everything basketball-related over to him for public settlement. And so now, whatever doesn't go right, you look at the 11-time champion as the coach. He turned around, signed Carmelo Anthony, the prize free agent, who could have left, by the way, but he didn't want to leave money on the table. Nobody's here to blame him for doing that. It would have been a haircut to go to Chicago or one of the other teams that were options at the time. But not only do I want top dollar, I want a no-trade clause. Of course we'll give you a no-trade clause. Bill, we're going to draft Porzingis. Now, everybody's happy. But what Bill failed to do is continue to build around those players. And unfortunately for Melo, what he also showed is he couldn't be the best player on a championship contending team. And so now what ends up happening is his value isn't the player that they signed. Bill clearly is misguided publicly on how he's handling it, because all you do is devalue the player. You're not going to get the level of value you'd hope in return for a guy that just averaged 20 points in the league. And so now it becomes a situation where Dolan, Phil, and Melo are literally stuck with one another. So it doesn't matter what Bill says publicly. Carmelo, Dirk, LeBron, the only 3 players in the league with a no-trade clause, he's not going to be able to come to him and say, we're going to trade you to the worst team in the league, because that's not going to work, and or vice versa, because other teams know that he may not want to come to that team. So the only thing I could do is trade you to play with LeBron or trade you to play with CP3. I anticipate what's going to happen in training camp is Bill is going to be in his job, Melo's going to be in uniform for the Knicks.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll continue with Mark Woods from NBA United Kingdom, followed by Josh Craig from Eon Culture.
And clearly,
hey, Jalen, how are you?
He can get to the Clippers, unless he can get to the Clippers or the Cavs. Sorry.
Jalen, I was wondering if you could describe what you think the greatest evolution has been in that from the Warriors of 2 years ago to the team that we see today, and which one of those two do you think ultimately we'll see as the greatest squad?
Well, the biggest evolution goes through the same moniker, and it's called strength in numbers. Well, they actually had that before. Bogut, a shot blocking big that also can get you assists, a really good passer. Zilli was a rim protector, can get you blocks, can get you boards. Leandro Barbosa can get you 10 points in the quarter coming off the bench. You still had a Harrison Barnes that you drafted. And then you also still had Iguodala. And you still had Sean Livingston. Strength in numbers was legitimate. Now it's strength in all-stars. Look no further than yesterday, where Steph and KD combined 74 points. That was the most they combined for a game this season, while Clay and Draymond were in single digits. So they morphed into a team that, over that period, however, what nothing gets discussed is that they've been consistent defensively. While, unlike the Houston Rockets, we get enamored with their offense, rightfully so, because they have 3 guys that can get you 40 on a given night and 4 guys that can make 5 threes on a given night at least. We get enamored with their offense, but their depth lineup on defense with Draymond playing 4s and 5s and now KD an improved defender and rebounder and shot blocker. I think that's what looks a lot more different with this year's team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh, you're up.
Hey, Jalen, this is Craig. So with Tony Parker and Kawhi being out, at least for a game, what strategy do you think the Spurs should use to remain competitive in this series?
Well, you're searching for points now, and LaMarcus played well in the first half in particular, but then he got gassed late. It's hard to play a lot of power when they're playing five guys around the 3 line, so then you need more minutes from Jonathan Simmons, who played hard, was productive, and he just hasn't been. He's not the 20-plus point scorer type of player. You want Danny Green and Patty Mills to shoot better. They both struggled, but the bench played well. I think they outscored Golden State's bench 39-13. So I just don't think in Game 2 they're going to be able to match the firepower and/or the onslaught of the Golden State Warriors, who are going to play a lot better.
Okay, awesome.
We'll continue with Cameron Sprill from Golden State of Mind, followed by Gary George from Inland Valley News. You're up, Cameron.
Hi, thanks so much. Thank you, Jalen. So we're also waiting on word from Iguodala. He only played 10 minutes in Game 1, and he has something going on with his knee. What impact do you think Iguodala's absence would have on the Warriors' bench if, in fact, he can't go in Game 2 or beyond?
This is the thing I love about sports. If they don't have a healthy Andre Iguodala, they won't win the championship. He was the player that was actually Finals MVP when they won it a couple of years ago, playing against LeBron James, and the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to be there again. So he is an important part to what they do. I still think having a potential 2-0 lead versus the Spurs going back to San Antonio and them being the favorite going into the series, I think they'll still, whether he plays or not, with all due respect, we'll find a way to advance. But in the next round, if they don't have him, just like last year, I don't think they win it all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, brother.
Gary, you're up.
I'm on an NBA call. Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah, they have a call with Jalen Rose.
Gary, okay, let's mute his line. Thank you. We'll continue with Justin Kish from 365 Sports Network. Justin, are you there? Okay. Well, we'll go with Mohan Gumate from TV Philippines.
Yeah, hi, Jalen. Thanks for taking the time out. I want to go back to the Jaja play, which you call flagrant on Kawhi. I mean, a play like this could possibly cost this team a run at a championship. As a player, do you expect some kind of payback, maybe for a play of this magnitude that knocks out Kawhi?
The game has changed a lot, and one of the things that has changed is there's no true physical intimidation. And what I mean by that is a player could talk trash, a player could thump his chest or celebrate. It can be excessive. There's certain things that may happen out on the floor that you may not like, but ultimately you can't physically intimidate that player anymore. It's not like he can drive to the basket and Bill Laimbeer is going to foul him by his arms, and then the second foul by Rick Mahorn over the head is going to be a lot harder. Or Charles Oakley and Patrick Ewing, the Davis brothers in Indiana, you get where I'm going. So because of that, and the fact that the Spurs carry themselves with class, and not saying that it wouldn't be a class move to retaliate, it just supports. I think there won't be any Jaja driving to the basket and all of a sudden somebody else, the 12th man is in the game to go clothesline them. I just don't think that's going to take place.
Thank you.
I will continue with Justin DiMiglio from CSN New England. Justin, are you there? He may be recording. Okay. So Matthew Foley from OZY Media.
Hey, Jalen, you just touched on this a little bit, the idea of the game changing these past years. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what's changed as far as what's acceptable for trash talking on the court, and how much does a player like Draymond, what type of value does he add or sometimes subtract with his mental battles that he gets in?
I think over the years, the boundaries as, again, physical intimidation was taken out of the game, and now we have so.
Hello, Mr. Kish.
Yes.
Hi, they were wondering if you will have a question during today's call.
I don't. They actually answered a couple of my questions already, so I was like,
okay.
Sorry about that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I'll let him know. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. I'll place you back in.
Not only, by how he plays, but by what he says. As an opponent, you know how you can shut the guy in front of you up. Play better than him, beat him. That's really what you can do. And so I think while Draymond is really the anchor on the interior of the Golden State Warriors, he has to be a player that finds ways to keep himself emotionally invested, keep the technicals down, and not be putting himself in a position to get ejected from a big game.
Thank you.
All right, we'll continue with James Ernst from Grueling Truth, followed by Gary George from Inland Valley News. You're up, James.
Yes, Jalen, I was wondering your thoughts on Kevin Durant's 4-block output in the game. How influential has his progression in defense been?
Well, there was a tale of two halves, and while he did have 4 blocks, and I appreciated how Steph took over in the third, and KD was terrific in fourth, there was a period of time within the first 3 quarters that seemed like every guy that was scoring the basket was overtaking. Whether it was Marcus Aldridge on the post, whether it was a couple of high-low actions, Kawhi Leonard. And so in the first half, he was a target for most of the game. And in the second half, though he was able to sprinkle his blocks throughout the game, I think his activity picked up once his offense got a lot better. It did help that Kawhi went out of the game. But he's paying a lot more attention on that end. He's a lot more invested. Having Draymond helps a lot because he's usually going to play against the dominant big man on the other teams on the other side. But he is long, he is athletic, and having his versatility at that spot defensively allows them to continue to play how they want to play on the offensive side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary, you're up.
Jalen, how you doing? Jalen, my question to you is, as a former player, the insight, the understanding as an analyst, what should Pop have done in order to disrupt the rhythm and the flow? Because the Warriors were going to get hot sooner or later. But what should he have done, in your opinion, to preserve the win with the loss, with Kawhi going out?
Oh, Pop is the master. I mean, we saw it as they advanced past Houston. He decides to sit out Kawhi, and he went by 39 points, and all of a sudden Kawhi's healthy game 1, and they're thumping the Golden State Warriors on their floor. I just think the adjustment is something that he couldn't control, and that's Kawhi Leonard got injured. Because I can truly say, had he stayed in the game, I booked San Antonio Spurs to be up 1-0 the way that was going.
Absolutely. Do you think he should have slowed the game down? Do you think whatever, forced the ball into more to slow it up, more into the shot?
Well, there were 3 different levels that he couldn't control. Is that when you're not scoring, you allow them to run. Also, both teams were turning the ball over. I think it was 41 total assists, 36 total turnovers. And also when you're not getting to the free throw line. And so you're not doing those 3 things, you can't slow down the other team.
Right. Yeah, you think, I don't know if, say, for example, they had a player who wasn't a good free throw shooter, which, the Warriors are pretty good. But, I mean, the hack or shack or something like that, do you think that could have been employed to even slow it up and say, hey, we don't have Tony Parker, we don't have Kawhi, what are we going to do?
Well, you probably could do the hack and shack if Shaq was playing. Or Drummond was playing. But, the Warriors don't have those level of offensive flaws that you can just also I want to give them a lot of credit. Like, Steph got going with flurries really fast to put up 19 so quick. And then before you know it, KD got going, and you look up at the scoreboard, like, they both have 70. And Zaza was their third leading scorer with 11 points and 9 boards. Unintentional foul on Kawhi Leonard.
Okay.
All right, and our last question goes to Bill Horinda from KFBK. You're up, Bill.
Jalen, thanks for the time. The last champion outside of the top 10 in defensive rating, the Lakers back in 01 at 21st. The Cavs are 21st in defensive rating this season. Do you think that that's the biggest concern? I don't want to anoint them and put them past Boston or Washington, but would that be your biggest concern as you move through the playoffs, preparing for San Antonio or Golden State, number 1 and number 2 in defensive rating this season?
I appreciate your professionalism and not wanting to put them past the Boston Celtics or the Washington Wizards, so I'll do it for you.
Thanks, man. I've seen too much.
Unless there's a catastrophic injury, that's going to happen. With that being said, I respectfully have said that they're the NBA's version of Noah's Ark. Like, they have 2 of everything. And so when you're able to craft a roster like that around LeBron James, who's still the elite dominant player in the league, they went from being a team that wanted to string together 3 to 5 stops at a time to a team that wants to end the game by scoring 3 to 5 baskets at a time, and a lot of times from three-point range or in isolation situations, which you normally don't see. I'm pretty sure just like you have the defensive rating stat that's pretty low, I'm pretty sure they're probably one of the teams in the league that isolate more than anybody. And usually that's a no-no except for who's doing it. And it's it's Kyrie, and it's LeBron. So while they've been undefeated in the playoffs, I always looked out at the stat sheet and was like, Indiana still scoring over 100. Toronto still scoring over 100. When can that be a problem? Well, it could be a problem if they're facing a Golden State Warriors team that is healthy, in particular with all of their core group of players. That probably could be an issue at that point. But when I see Andre Iguodala dealing with a knee injury and how the first half in particular, yesterday's game went, if I had to shift to who I felt like I had to put all the chips in the middle of the table to win it all, if the finals were to happen tomorrow, it's hard not to say the Cleveland Cavaliers would be my pick.
Gotcha. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
And that concludes today's media call. Later today, we'll have a copy of the transcript on ESPN Media Zone. Also, a reminder that ESPN will exclusively televise the 2017 NBA Western Conference Finals with Game 2 taking place tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Thanks to all of the media for your questions, and thank you so much, Jalen, for your time.
Intentional and flagrant, not necessarily dirty or mean. Have a good day.
Thanks, Jalen.
This concludes today's call. Thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect.